The palace door may have just slammed shut on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And the most explosive part is not the return itself, it is the possibility that King Charles has decided the future of the monarchy matters more than repairing a family relationship on demand. What looked like a carefully staged homecoming narrative is now beginning to resemble something far more uncomfortable. A public announcement made before the palace had agreed to the script, followed by a silence so complete that it may have said everything. And if that silence was deliberate, then the Sussex camp may have walked straight into a royal trap of its own making. If the king is not in on this mess, that is the detail that changes the entire temperature of this story. While Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were reportedly allowing the world to believe that a dramatic return to British soil was being prepared, King Charles was apparently being confronted with the reality only days before the story exploded publicly. The timing is extraordinary. The Sussex camp allegedly pushed the narrative outward, the headlines multiplied, expectations began building, and suddenly everyone was waiting for the palace to respond. But the palace did something much colder. It did nothing. No triumphant welcome, no carefully choreographed family reunion, no official embrace, just silence. And silence from the palace is never simply silent when the stakes are this high. According to the narrative surrounding the announcement, King Charles was quietly informed on a Sunday, while the wider public story did not emerge until Wednesday. That gap is the clue. If this had truly been a mutually coordinated royal reconciliation, why would the public learn about it before the palace had visibly prepared for it? Why create the impression of an imminent homecoming and then leave the institution standing completely still? The image becomes almost painfully awkward, bags packed, cameras waiting, headlines announcing reconciliation, and yet the royal household seemingly refusing to open the door. The bigger question is whether Prince Harry expected emotion to override structure. The story suggests that he may have believed his father's affection would create an opening. After all, King Charles is still a father, and the emotional pull of Archie and Libet would be impossible to dismiss. But affection does not automatically equal institutional permission. A private reunion is one thing. A royal comeback is something else entirely. And while the public was being encouraged to focus on family healing, another reality was supposedly unfolding behind palace walls. King Charles and Prince William were being portrayed as united in their refusal to permit a so-called half-in, half-out arrangement. That changes everything, because if father and heir are aligned, the Sussex strategy becomes dramatically harder to execute. The most revealing part is that this resistance does not necessarily require a dramatic public declaration. In fact, the absence of one may be the strategy. If King Charles were to publicly attack Prince Harry, strip titles, or launch an aggressive institutional confrontation, the Sussex narrative could immediately transform into a story about persecution. Suddenly, the controversy would no longer be about whether Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were seeking a royal foothold. It would become a spectacle about a supposedly cruel family punishing them. No official platform, no dramatic confrontation, no public war, no spectacular punishment that can be turned into another international media campaign. Just a closed institutional door and the refusal to explain every detail. That strategy deprives the controversy of oxygen. It leaves the Sussex camp with fewer opportunities to claim that they were rejected through some theatrical act of cruelty, because a private appearance can generate photographs, headlines, and social media attention. But without the machinery of the monarchy behind it, the symbolism is completely different. A charity visit without palace backing is not the same as an official royal engagement. A residence in Britain is not the same as a royal household. A family meeting is not the same as reinstatement. And if Prince Harry believed there was a route around King Charles's hesitation, the next obstacle was always going to be Prince William. That is where the temperature allegedly rises from awkward family tension into something far more permanent. While palace diplomats can choose careful words and avoid inflammatory statements, Prince William has a much more personal stake in protecting the future of the institution. He is not merely a brother watching another brother return. He is the future of the monarchy, watching a controversy repeatedly threaten the stability of the family structure surrounding the crown. The idea that Prince William would simply absorb years of conflict, forget everything, shake hands, and welcome Prince Harry back into the fold becomes harder to understand when viewed against everything that has happened before. The emotional damage is not theoretical. The public accusations, interviews, books, leaks, and relentless media attention created a level of distrust that cannot be erased by one announcement about moving closer to family. But the deeper deeper motive behind the sudden British return narrative may be even more revealing than the palace refusal itself. The timing allegedly arrived while the royal family was away from the center of London, with King Charles and Prince William at Balmoral. That detail matters because a dramatic announcement made while senior royals are gathered privately creates enormous pressure. Suddenly, the institution is forced to react while the cameras are already rolling and the public is demanding answers. Yet instead of rushing toward the Sussex camp, the palace appears to have chosen the one response that completely destroys the intended spectacle. Nothing. No grand negotiation. No emergency reconciliation. No announcement that the old family arrangement could somehow be restored. The reaction attributed to Prince William was therefore presented as something far more intense than ordinary sibling irritation. The alleged return plan arrived at precisely the moment when Prince William's attention was already focused on his own family and the pressures surrounding Catherine. To him, this was not simply another headline about Prince Harry. It represented another disruption arriving through the same familiar channel. Public pressure first, private discussion later. And that is why the language surrounding the response becomes so explosive. The message was reportedly that Prince William would not allow the Sussex controversy to distract from the future of the monarchy. Then came the argument that makes the entire situation almost impossible to ignore. How can someone spend years publicly describing private family disputes, participate in interviews that expose deeply personal conversations, allow damaging allegations to circulate, and then suddenly announce a desire to return home so everyone can heal? That is the contradiction at the heart of the story. Reconciliation normally requires trust, accountability, and a willingness to acknowledge what went wrong. But the Sussex narrative, as presented here, appears to demand something else: access first, reconciliation later. The Times was then presented as another important piece of the puzzle, with the report claiming that King Charles had made the future of Prince William and the monarchy his priority. That wording is devastating because it separates private affection from institutional responsibility. But King Charles could reportedly be pleased at the possibility of seeing his family while still refusing to alter the structure of the monarchy. That means the door to personal contact and the door to royal status are two completely different doors. And Prince William's position becomes even more complicated when the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip enters the picture. Their final years were portrayed as having been overshadowed by enormous family tension, and the argument here is that Prince William has no intention of allowing another cycle of conflict to reach Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis. The tragedy is obvious. The children on both sides of the family are deprived of a natural relationship with Archie and Libet. But from Prince William's perspective, the cost of reopening the door could be even greater if every private interaction becomes another source of public controversy. That brings the investigation directly back to motive. Why announce the return now? Why make the story so public? Why allow the impression of a dramatic family healing before the palace had visibly agreed to it? Critics of the Sussex strategy argue that this was never simply about nostalgia, grandchildren, or repairing old wounds. They see a calculated attempt to manufacture relevance at a moment when commercial pressure in the United States was allegedly increasing. The strategy would be brutally simple: announce a royal comeback, create global headlines, make the public imagine reconciliation is inevitable, and then place the palace under pressure to respond. If King Charles offered even a minor official role, the Sussex camp could potentially frame the move as a return to royal duty. And once official duties enter the equation, questions surrounding security, access, accommodation, and institutional recognition would immediately follow. That is why the security issue becomes so explosive. Prince Harry has spent years fighting over his security arrangements in Britain, while the Sussex camp has simultaneously emphasized privacy concerns surrounding Archie and Libet. The contradiction practically writes its own headline. They want protection from the institution, but not necessarily the institutional obligations that come with being part of it. They want privacy, yet public attention remains central to their international profile. They want distance from the monarchy until proximity becomes strategically valuable. And then there is the most uncomfortable possibility of all. What if the health of King Charles was being used as the emotional justification for the return? The argument presented by Harry's side was that his father's health made proximity more important, but critics immediately questioned why the concern was appearing now, particularly after years of distance and public conflict. quickly. The timing again becomes the clue, because if this was truly about a father becoming older and a family wanting precious time together, the palace could still permit private family contact without restoring royal status. That distinction may be precisely what the Sussex camp failed to overcome. The public reaction then becomes another obstacle. Polling cited in the original narrative suggested overwhelming opposition to an official return or taxpayer-funded privileges. Whether every figure is accepted or not, the broader political problem remains obvious. Any formal reintegration would have to survive public scrutiny. King Charles cannot simply act as a father. He must also act as monarch. And so the supposed triumphant return begins to look less like a royal comeback and more like a confrontation with an immovable system. King Charles may keep the private family door slightly open, while Prince William protects the institutional door with both hands firmly against it. The Sussex camp can return to Britain physically. They can generate headlines. They can visit places. They can tell their own story. But the one thing they cannot manufacture is palace permission. And that leaves the final question hanging over everything. If the Crown has already decided there will be no half-in, half-out arrangement, what exactly happens when the Sussex camp realizes that the royal door is not waiting for them to walk through it?